Hello fellow YouTubers, it's me Tom Versal here and welcome back to Hidden Image Limited, and today I am finally going to be doing my PiL Albums ranking video. I've been meaning to do this since End of World, which is the latest PiL album, came out, which is almost a year ago now I believe, so it's been quite a while, but honestly my life just has been going really busy lately with uni and a lot of other stuff, jobs and everything. So it has been a while, but I have written some notes down in this book, so obviously not that many, just a page worth of notes. And I've gone through and re-listened to every PiL album, and I've ranked them. Honestly, I've done this in the past, a few years ago now, I think, but my ranking has changed quite a bit, a lot more than I realised, so it's been quite shocking for me as well, but still, a really interesting dive, I guess. I don't know what you'd call it. But it's funny as well because on this channel I tend to just talk about the first era of PiL because quite clearly that's my favourite and that's often the community's favourite as well. But I do genuinely love every era of PiL, from the middle era, which is like from album up until That What Is Not, um, which I call the McGeek era, and then the original era, the era with Keith Levine, and the most recent era with Lou Edmonds, Scott Firth, Bruce Smith. I like all of them. I think they're all individual sort of projects in a way. Each one has their own sort of sound, which is really cool. But still, they're all labelled as PiL, so they have to be ranked as PiL. I can't rank them as this era ranked, this era ranked. But I'm sure you'll be able to interpret that anyway. So, yeah, what I am counting for this video, by the way, because I think PiL have 12 albums, PiL would say otherwise, but I am going to be counting Commercial Zone, so the albums that we are counting towards this ranking are First Issue, Metal Box, Flowers of Romance, Commercial Zone, This Is What You Want, This Is What You Get, Album, Happy, 9, That What Is Not, This Is PiL, What the World Needs Now, and End of World, which is 12 albums. So I'm not talking about any live albums or EPs or compilations or anything. The only outlier, I guess, is Commercial Zone, because it's kind of a demo sort of thing in a way. But I thought I might as well talk about it. It does have some tracks that you can't get anywhere else, so and it's completely different lineup to the final version of that album, so I might as well talk about it a little bit. So yeah, we might as well get on with it now. It's been almost 3 minutes, and I'm trying to do this fairly quickly, so without further ado, let's just get into it. So up in last place, number 12, we have the album 9, which released in 1989, and it's called 9 because PiL classed this as their ninth record, not with Commercial Zone, but with Live in Tokyo and Paris in the Spring, which are the two live albums. But technically this is their 7th record, and it comes in at 44 minutes 4 seconds long. So yeah, John Lydon vocals, John McGee guitar, Alan Diaz bass, Bruce Smith drums. Sorry if I'm looking down there a lot, I'm just reading my notes. For this one, the band continues to create sort of new wave music, which they were doing in this sort of era of the band. Sort of more pop sounding, very reverby. But to me, they don't really do it that well. A lot of the songs on this, which I don't know if you'll understand this, but a lot of the songs on here sound like from the game The Sims, and I think a lot of it comes down to the sort of keys that they use. They're very optimistic and pleasant sounding, I don't know. I also don't really like how they keep putting backing vocals on these albums, and it's really bad at this point. Like, they keep putting these weird backing singers, and they're just not a thing for me. A few bands that I liked started doing it in the late 80s, and I just don't get why they do it. Like I said, the production, extremely 80s. You've got the sort of reverby drums, synthesizers, like I said, those backing vocals. It's just not for me. It's not a terrible album. I don't think PiL really have a bad album, but this it's just definitely their weakest one. I'm doing a top 3 and best and top 3 worst tracks for all these albums, even the ones that I don't really think are 3 bad tracks. But for me, I would say the best tracks on here are Disappointed, Happy, and USLS1. And the worst 3 tracks are Like That, which I just can't stand that track. Warrior, which I wish they'd stop playing live because I really don't like Warrior, but they play it at every gig. And Armada, which I think, yeah, it's the closing track. So, yeah, 9. Up in number 11, um, coming in at number 11, should I say, we have This Is What You Want, This Is What You Get from 1984. This is a 36 minutes, 36 seconds long, and at this point, PiL was basically two members and a load of session musicians. So you got John Lydon on vocals, Martin Atkins on drums, but I think he does a few other things on here as well. And then you've got the session players, which, for what I got, you got Colin War on guitar. I don't know how to pronounce some of these names. Uh, Louis Bernardi on bass, Richard Cottle on keys, and Gary Barnacle on like brass section, sort of saxophones and horns and stuff. This, yeah, as I said, with the loss of Levine and Wobble for this record, I imagine it was a struggle for them to get this made, especially since Commercial Zone came out shortly before this, I think. So Levine released that, and you've got a lot of demos of songs off here on Commercial Zone, and they sound pretty different. But what they did with this record is they went in a more sort of new wave disco sort of sound. It's quite odd. So some songs on here sound very dated, kind of like I was on about with 9. You've got the sort of 80s production, but the songwriting itself isn't pop or new wave. There's a lot of experimental tracks on here, like Tie Me to the Length of That, The Pardon, Where Are You, 1981, The Order of Death. You've only really got Bad Life, Solitaire, and This Is Not a Love Song, which are kind of more like pop songs, but the rest are still pretty PiL-like that first era of PiL. On this, I find Lydon's vocals are the most annoying they'll ever get. Like, I can't get through some of these songs sometimes because of his vocals. They're just so annoying. And yeah, like I said, this is where the new wave sort of started to take a hold of PiL. The top tracks for me, Solitaire, which has like a nice funky sort of bass riff and stuff. Tie Me to the Length of That, which is a really menacing, dark post-punk sounding song. And 1981, which sounds clearly like something off Flowers of Romance, very percussive. And the worst 3 tracks, Where Are You, This Is Not a Love Song, and The Pardon. I just don't care for those tracks that much. Coming in at number 10, and this one really shocked me and upset me that I had to put it this low, but I'm sorry. It has to be End of World, which is their latest album. John Lydon on vocals, Lou Edmonds on guitars, Scott Firth bass, Bruce Smith drums. Yeah, this came out last year, and obviously I was really excited for it because new PiL album, and this came out almost 10 years after their previous album. And I'm not going to spoil anything, but the 2 albums before this, really to me, were like up there for me. I don't mean to spoil anything, but they were really solid albums. They were great. So I expected big things from this, especially coming so late after the other ones. And the background to this album being quite sad. You've got the death of Nora, John's wife, the death of John Rambo, who was a big part of the band at this point. I think he was a producer, manager, and stuff like that. So you got those 2. You got eventually Keith Levine dying as well, who wasn't part of the band, but I'm sure it had some impact. And so I expected quite a darker sounding PiL album, especially with the title End of World, but it's just not. It just doesn't really offer that much to me. Weirdly, it drags, and it doesn't do that much new compared to the previous 2 albums that this era of PiL released. And I think, yeah, like I said, it just drags. Some of the highs are great, to be honest, but if they cut the lows from this album, it might have been higher up for me, but as I said, it drags. And oddly, I'm not a big fan of a lot of the singles. I think that the album tracks are good, but the singles are genuinely pretty weird. I would say the top tracks are Hawaii, which is the lead single, but I think that one's genuinely beautiful. John's probably the best vocals John's ever done. Like, he's great, and the soundscape in that song is just awesome. Then I would say LFCF, which I think stands for Liars, Fakes, Cheats, and Frauds or something. I can't remember, but that track's a good one. It sounds a bit more classic PiL. And then Strange is my 3rd top track. The There's also, I want to say, a little honourable mention, Dirty Mucky Delight, or Dirty Murky Delight. It's an alright song, but it sounds very Ian Jury like. If you listen to it, it sounds like an Ian Jury and the Blockheads sort of song, one of their more relaxed songs, even the title. So I wonder if it was a tribute to him, but I'm not sure. I would say the worst tracks are Penge, which is the opening track and one of the singles. I just can't stand it. Pretty Awful, which is ironic, and the Do That. I just don't know. There's no point in that song. But yeah, there's that. Up at number 10. Up at number 9, we have this one also might shock a lot of you, but Commercial Zone, which I don't have the black cover version, but still, Commercial Zone. This is from 1984, 32 minutes long. I don't remember if I said how long End of World is, but it's 2023, 50 minutes, 42 seconds long. This was 32 minutes long, so it goes by pretty fast. I think it's the shortest PiL album. John Lydon vocals, Keith Levine on guitar synth, Pete Jones on bass, Martin Atkins on drums, and it's the last of the Lydon and Keith Levine quadrilogy, ending that first era of PiL. It still continues the experimentation of the last 3 PiL albums before this, but you can hear a lot more of the danceable and funk aspects that came into play now that they'd moved from London to, I think, New York, but I can't remember. Is an official PiL album, so the production isn't up to scratch, and the songs clearly are still a work in progress at this point. But with Levine getting fired from the band, I guess he was just proud of this project and was pissed off that it wasn't being used, so he just released it. I think it's a good album. I think it's cool as well that Levine does a lot more clean stuff here as well. It's pretty interesting. He's very rarely using like the trebly overdrives that you hear on some of the earlier PiL stuff. But yeah, for me, the top tracks, I'd say Lou Reed, which there are 2 songs, Lou Reed Part 1, Lou Reed Part 2, but they're kind of the same. They're not the same song. The guitar parts are really different. Lou Reed Part 1's an instrumental, but they have the same rhythm section, so it's kind of like one song in a way, so I'll just count it as one. But if I had to say out of the 2, I would say Lou Reed Part 2 is definitely the better half. Bad Night, which is weird because it's more of a rock and roll song, which you would never expect PiL to do, but it's a good one. Has some really beautiful guitar lines in it as well. And then I would say Miller High Life, which is just a crazy outro. I think it's instrumental as well, with a lot of synth work on it. It's really cool. And then the worst tracks, this is not a love song. Again, it's just not good. I hate both versions of it, this and the final version on Night on This Is What You Want, This Is What You Get. Both versions suck. Blue Water, it's not bad. It's definitely more experimental, kind of like you expect PiL to be at this point, but it's just a bit repetitive. And Young Brit, which isn't bad, but there's not a lot of tracks on here, so I had to go with Young Brit. It just sounds pretty unfinished compared to the final version, which I think Young Brit became Solitaire, so clearly I like the final version more than the original for that song. Coming up at number 8, we have Happy, released in 1987. I guess Happy is the title because of the question mark. This is 35 minutes, 17 seconds long. John Lydon on vocals, John McGeoch on guitar, Lou Edmonds on guitar, but he also does synth, Alan Diaz on bass, and Bruce Smith on drums. So almost, you've got 3 parts of the modern PiL lineup there, with Lou, Bruce, and John. But this is the first of the McGeoch era of PiL. It has some pretty strong riffs. I think a lot of the guitar parts on here are really good. I don't know who's doing what, but still you can hear John McGeoch's influence on here. But I don't think this album overstays its welcome, unlike 9, which really is just like this album but bad. The production on here is still way too reverby, like 9, and I hate those stupid backing vocals because they are still on here, and I don't get the point. Like, I don't know why they had them. And also, just like 9, I think a lot of it sounds like The Sims again. Maybe it's a me thing, but overall it's still a really good album. Very new wavy, more rock sort of sounding compared to a lot of PiL albums. And it's pretty short as well, so it goes by really fast. I think there's only 8 tracks, so it's just basically a perfect length album in my opinion. And there's not much bad really. The top tracks for me: Fat Chance Hotel, Seattle, and Rules and Regulations. And the worst tracks: Hard Times, Opening Revolving, and Angry. Those three. Hard Times, I think Hard Times sucks. It sounds like a pirate song. Like if you listen to it, it sounds like pirates. But the other two aren't too bad. I guess I just had to pick three tracks that I didn't like as much. And Save Me is actually a really good song as well. And it's like this era's version of Pop Tones, because it's basically just two repetitive guitar riffs for ages. But it's a pretty solid album. Coming up at number 7, we have one. I think this and Happy could both be swapped depending on my mood, but right now, That What Is Not. And this is a super underrated record from 1992, their only 90s album. 49 minutes, 37 seconds long. John Lydon on vocals, John McGeoch on guitar, Alan Diaz on bass, and I don't know how you say his name. Kurt Basquera? I don't know how you say his name, but he's on drums. But I think he's a session player. I think it's just a free piece at this point. This is the final album with John McGeoch, and it sees the band with the best production, in my opinion, that they've had since album. Like, the reverb, it's there, but it's more to serve a purpose. It's not like the 80s sort of cliche gated drum sort of reverb. It definitely serves more of a purpose on this album. And for me, the songwriting here is also very dynamic and has a lot more progression in it. Most tracks build as they go on and sort of have changes, kind of like, I don't know, I want to call it prog, but it's not like prog rock. It's definitely more punky, more aggressive. I don't really know how to describe it, because I wouldn't call this album as new wave as Happy or Nine. It's got a lot more rock elements to it, but still, a lot of weird sounds that you can hear on this. Sorry, I'm doing a lot of this off script, as you can quite tell. There's also, I think, the BBC Mark Goodyear sessions, which are sort of live renditions, kind of like the John PiL sessions of Metal Box, and those are really good. I recommend listening to those if you haven't already. Sometimes I think they're even better than the album versions. I will say it is too long. I think some of the tracks are just sort of meh. Like, Happy is pretty much good through and through. This one's got higher highs, but also the lows, I just think I don't care for them. They're not even bad. They're just sort of boring. And to me, that's kind of more offensive than being bad. But the top tracks are great. So I would say the top track's Acid Drops, which is the opening track, and it just has so much going on in it. And it even has sort of a sample from the Sex Pistols as well. So it harkens back to that, which is really cool. God, which is a great one, and Looks Up, which is a really energetic, in-your-face sort of punkier sounding PiL song. The worst tracks: Unfair Ground, Good Things, Covered. I don't know what to add to those. They're just kind of boring to me. But, I mean, if you cut all those songs off the album, those 3 songs, and just made it a shorter album with every other track that I haven't mentioned, so what would it be, a 7-track album? I think it'd be really good. But still, that's just how it is, really, isn't it? So, yeah, I think it's a very underrated one. That's the PiL album nobody ever talks about. Like, every other album gets talked about a little bit, but no one ever mentions this outside of the weird cover art. But I think it's a really good one. Coming up at number 6, which this one, again, might shock a lot of you, because this is a very popular album, but album, or compact disc, cassette, whatever you want to call it, but I'm showing you the vinyl versions today, so album. John Lydon vocals, and that's essentially the band. This is kind of like a John Lydon solo album, but he has a lot of session players on here, so I'll just mention a few of them. Steve Vai on guitar, Bill Laswell on bass, Ginger Baker on drums, Tony Williams on drums, and Ryuichi Sakamoto. I'm going to guess that's how you pronounce his name, but sorry if that's not. He's from Yellow Magic Orchestra. He's on synth. So you've got quite a lot of talented, skillful, well-known players. This is kind of like a super group in a way. Yeah, even though it's a load of session players and there is no band, That being said, they came up with one of the best sounding and most consistent PiL albums. I mean, this is, you know, it's good when it's 7 tracks, because to me that just means a lot of bands like to make their albums even numbered, so they'll make it 8 tracks or 10 tracks. But it's better, in my opinion, to just have 7 solid tracks or 9 solid tracks. Uh, and this one does. I don't really think there's a bad song on here. It's just really, really good. It's one of those PiL albums that doesn't have really anything wrong with it, even though it's this low. And I think some of the albums that I'm going to mention after this definitely have problems. This one really doesn't. So why isn't it higher? Well, I don't know. I just think I don't go back to it as often, and I think, yeah, I don't really know. But I guess I just prefer the other 5. But yeah, it is the most famous PiL album, and it is more rock sounding. I remember when I first was trying to get into PiL, and I didn't like anything before this. This was the only one I liked, and it sounded to me like a sequel to Nevermind the Bollocks, which in a way it kind of does at points. Um, so I would say the top tracks are Fishing, Bags, and Ease, which Ease probably isn't in my top tracks, but I just had to mention it because of that Steve Vai solo. Like, God, what is going on at the end of that track? It is absolutely crazy. They basically start jamming, and the vocals cut, and then the rest of the song is just this massive building jam session with Steve Vai going absolutely crazy on his guitar. It's the only time he's like that. Throughout the rest of the album, he's focusing on rhythm, and then on Ease, it just lets all that go, and it's just so good. It's a good point of the album. The worst tracks, I'd say, I don't think there's any bad tracks on here, but I would say these are the weakest. Round, which is the weakest one. Home, and FFF, which is the opening track. The FFF is alright, but I don't like Lydon's vocals on it really that much. But that being said, Lydon sounds pretty good on this one compared to a lot of PiL albums. And I can't remember if I said, but that's from 1986, 40 minutes, 55 seconds long. Coming in at number 5, my 4 and 5 could switch depending on mood, but for now, I'm just going to trust what this book says. Number 5 is This Is PiL from 2012, 64 minutes, 9 seconds long. This has John Lydon vocals, Lou Edmonds on guitar, and he uses Saz a lot on here. Scott Firth on bass and synth, and Bruce Smith on drums. Just let me get a drink. So this is PiL's first album, their first comeback album. God, I can't talk. So this is the first PiL album since they came back. Released 20 years after their prior album, which was That What Is Not. So 1992, 2012. So they split up after that album, and it took a lot of selling out from John Lydon to get the band back together, which I don't hate him for, but a lot of people do. But I think if he needs money and he wants to get his band back going, he can do what he wants, doing all these interviews, doing the butter adverts, these documentaries on sharks and insects and stuff. That's up to him. If he wants to get his band back together, I can totally understand it. So it's kind of a grind for this to be a thing. And yeah, I think it shows. I think it's a really, really damn good album. And if you've got it on vinyl, it's on 2 vinyl, and they're pretty thick as well. So you got a heavy bass sound on this thing. This, compared to the last bunch of albums, which are more of a new wave sort of band, this one harkens back to that dub post-punk sound of the earlier records. And yeah, it's really good. It is a little long, I would say. Like I said, 64 minutes. It does drag a little bit. However, most of the songs here are actually very good, and the band gave it their all for this. Some of these tracks are up there for me with classic PiL, and the production, songwriting, and energy on this one is just really good. So I would say, honestly, the top tracks are Deeper Water, Terrorgate, and Fool. Now, Fool isn't really anything exceptional, but I just love the atmosphere of it. Whereas Terrorgate and Deeper Water is astonishing live, and Terrorgate is just enormous sounding. It is. You can't deny it. It just sounds enormous. Um, but you've also got a lot of other good tracks on here, like One Drop. The Room I Am In is. I don't like the lyrics, but the actual ambience of it is kind of like Yes or something. It sounds really good. And Out of the Woods, which is a cool closing track. But the worst tracks, these three, if they cut these three off the album, this would be even higher for me. Lollipop Opera. I don't know what was going on with that track. Lollipop Opera actually sucks. It might be the worst PiL song. Human, which there's not really anything wrong with it, but there's nothing great about it either. It's just like every other song on this album, but a bit worse, you know. And This Is PiL, the opening track. It's not too bad, but it's just, it shouldn't have been an opening track, and I don't know. I could see it being, what is it, on the One Drop EP, but I don't understand why it's on the album, other than the title. It's just not that good, really. It's not that energetic. But there's that. So up at number 4, we have What the World Needs Now, which this one here is from 2015, 55 minutes long, 55 minutes 7 seconds long. Sorry, this is with John Lydon on vocals, Lou Edmonds on guitar and sax, Scott Firth bass, Bruce Smith drums. You know, same lineup, and really the same sort of album. To be honest, this is kind of like a more refined version of This Is PiL. So yeah, it really, to me, once I was getting into PiL and listening through them all, this one really cemented to me that that this lineup of PiL is proof that they are back. Which for me, that middle sort of period, is very bumpy. You've got like highs and lows. Well, you got this, which was incredible, and then listening to this, it really cemented to me that they were back. It flows very well, and it, like I said earlier, it's like a more refined version of This Is PiL. That being said, I do think that this has higher highs. Like, the good parts of this are way better than this, but it also has lower lows. Like I said, Lollipop Opera, Human, which I don't really care for. So for me, these could swap any day. And as of writing this script, I guess I put this above it. But now that I think about it, maybe I'd put this at number 4 and this at number 5. But we'll trust the script. So, well, notebook, I guess, because it's not a script, clearly. But this at number 4. So, yeah. Still though for me, great record. Not much more to say. The top tracks, I would say Corporate, which sounds like something off Metal Box. I don't know what's going on with Lou Edmonds' guitar, but it is incredible and very catchy bass line. No Now, and that was just a good one. I don't really know what to say on that. And The One, which this one sounds very summery, very calming. It's good driving music. The worst tracks, Shoom, which is the last track. It's not bad, but I'm just sick of it, and I find the lyrics so cringe. It's just like, sex box, it's fucking bollocks. It's why for like 10 minutes. I like the lyric, What the World Needs Now is Another Fuck Off. That is a good lyric, but I don't get the rest of it. Spice of Choice and Whole Lifetime, those are my 2 other worst tracks. They're not bad, but like I said about some of the other worst tracks, that's kind of the problem. Like, they're not even bad. They're just there. Like, and that to me is kind of more offensive, like I said. But this has some really good stuff on it that I've not mentioned. Double Trouble is an excellent song. Again, sounds more like Metal Box. Betty Page, I mean, it's a tribute to fucking Betty Page over here. So, what else goes on in Betty Page? Oh yeah, it sounds like a Pink Floyd song called Lucifer Sam. It really sounds like a tribute to that. Yeah, so there you go. Not much more to say on that. Because I'm dragging this video out. You could have listened to a PiL album in this time. But anyway, next up, top 3. And these are really obvious picks now, aren't they? I've done the video. You knew all those. You didn't know all those. You know all these. I mean, if you know this channel, you know my top 3 PiL albums. But yeah, so coming in at number 3, first issue. This is from 1978. 39 minutes 54 seconds long, so almost 40 minutes long. John Lydon vocals, Keith Levene guitar, Jar Wobble on bass, and Jim Walker on drums. He's only on this album, and a song called The Cowboy Song, which is on their debut single B-side. But he was a great drummer. I wish he did more. PiL's debut album. It's super odd. Upon re-listening to it, I did note down that it is way more odd than I ever think it is. Because it just contains so much different sounds compared to pretty much every other PiL album. You've got noise rock. I mean, Theme is like something that would influence Flipper later on. Just this repetitive bass for 9 minutes whilst the guitar is just noise. Then you've got the punk sort of stuff with Religion and Annalisa. Spoken word with Religion Part 1, which is just vocals and reverb. Dub with Fodder Stomp. New wave with Public Image, which is just one of the quintessential new wave songs in my opinion. But it all works. It's very coherent, even though you've got a lot of random sort of odd sounds. It's clearly a transition album, clearly PiL trying to find their footing, and for Lydon and Levene, they both still sound influenced by their prior bands, the Sex Pistols and the Clash. But the experimental production on this album, I think what I mean there is, like, I think on Annalisa or Religion, I can't remember which one it is, but it has the whole song in one ear and the guitar in the other ear. It's weird. So that's what I mean by that production. But the incredible rhythm section as well, that keeps them both grounded. Because Jar Wobble and Jim Walker are just exceptional on here. And if you haven't heard The Human Condition, which is another project that Jar Wobble and Jim Walker did, you should check it out. It is really good. This isn't a long album, so it goes by fairly quickly. I don't think they should have cut anything off this album. It's pretty much just as good as it should be. So the top tracks for me, I'd say Annalisa, one of the catchiest guitar riffs ever, and some great vocals on that. Theme, which it sounds like nothing else that came out. You know, this is 1978, and Theme existed. Like, what is going on? It's just crazy flanging guitars. Almost sounds like something that, like I said, like Flipper would do later on, or the whole shoegaze scene would kind of rip that sort of thing off as well. And then also Religion too, which it's like a punk song, but the lyrics are great and it's very catchy. The worst tracks, Religion 1, it's just spoken word. Fodder Stomp, it's like 9 minutes of the same thing whilst they're just screaming, "We only wanted to be loved," over the top of it. It goes on a little. And Attack, which sounds like it's been made up as it goes. It's fucking weird. But yeah, none of those are bad. I like all 3 of those tracks. But just saying, we're at that point now. Top 3 PiL albums. You've got to pick worst tracks, and that's just what it came down to. Up at number 2, we have Flowers of Romance from 1981. This is 33 minutes 18 seconds long. Sister's back now telling the dog off. So sorry if you can hear that. But yeah, John Lydon vocals, Keith Levene on all sorts. I mean, I put guitar, but he does so much on here, and he actually avoided the guitar for this album, so it's pretty inaccurate for me to put guitar, but he still does play it on some tracks like Go Back and Finnegan. And Martin Atkins on drums. But really what I should say is all of them on drums and just so many other random instruments. I also noted Janet Leigh, who I think is this woman here, on bass, but I don't know if she actually played bass on the album or if she was just for live gigs at this point. I'm not sure on that. But yeah, this is by far the most weird and avant-garde PiL album. It works extremely well, though, in my opinion. I mean, with Wobble gone, who was a founding member, really, and he was on the previous 2 PiL albums, it must have been hard for them to make this, and for some reason, PiL decided to mostly focus on percussion. There's hardly any melodic elements here. Even vocally, it's not melodic, really. And what that is, that creates a very hollow and tribal sounding album. And I just want to mention, to me, this is the best sounding PiL album. Like, the production and engineering is astonishing. Nick Laney, or Nick Lawney, I don't know how you pronounce it, it was just brilliant. It was brilliant. And he also did Junkyard by the Birthday Party, which is quickly becoming one of my favourite albums. This doesn't sound remotely like any other PiL album out there, and it doesn't even sound like any other album that I can think of. I'm sure there are, but I don't know. It's just so creepy and atmospheric, and the percussive elements are just excellent. There's not really anything wrong with this album. It is a 10 out of 10 album, in my opinion. That being said, like, I have to pick worst tracks. But the top tracks for me, Banging the Door, which is one of the best PiL songs. It's just so scary and intense to listen to. Very dissonant. Under the House, again, very tribal. And For Enclosed Walls, it's just one of the most minimal things ever. And the experimentation on that song with the Mickey Mouse clock watch that you can hear, I don't really understand it, but it sounds incredible. That's like true genius for me when you start sampling shit like that. Like, why would you? But it works. And then worst tracks for me, Jaime's Hymn. That's the only bad song in my opinion. I just don't like it. But you can hear with that track that at this era they wanted to do film soundtracks, they would say. Which I don't know if that's true or if they were just talking shit. But with songs like that, you can kind of hear it. It does sound like that. And then later songs on Commercial Zone, like The Slab and Lou Reed Part 1, it does sound kind of like they were going into a film soundtrack sort of thing. And then obviously The Order of Death got used in, I think, Cop Killer, but I can't remember. Anyway, the other two worst tracks, Francis Massacre, and for me, Flowers of Romance, the title track, is also one of the weaker tracks. But none of them are bad. The only one that I think is a bit meh is Jaime's Hymn, but I still do really like that track. It's just, compared to the rest, it's not as good. And at number one, I mean, do I even have to talk about this? You all know what it is. Metal Box. And of course, I was going to show you the second edition version, just because it's more consistent with the rest of the packaging. But no, I had to get the actual metal box out. Oh, tin. It's not really a box though, is it? That's what I don't get. It's like a canister. But still, from 1979, 60 minutes, 29 seconds long. The band had loads of different lineups for this in a way because of all the drummers. But you had John Lydon on vocals, Keith Levine on guitar and synth, Jar Wobble on bass, and Keith and Jar Wobble do drums, I think, on this as well at some point, and John Lydon's on piano a little bit here and there. You also have David Humphrey, Richard Dudansky, and Martin Atkins, who are also on drums around this period. They're just on random tracks because they kept getting through drummers. So, but yeah, the main band, Keith, Jar, John. And this is just one of my top 3 albums. I would say it's probably my second favourite album ever. It's just perfect. There's not a bad track. I've got worse tracks written down, but it's a cop-out. When I get to them, you're going to be like, that is a cop-out picking those 3. And yeah, you're right, because I just don't know what bad to say about this. It's everything about it. The packaging, I mean, you get this, right? So I'll talk about this first, but this album has a lot of energy and is still super bleak to this day. I mean, when you listen to this, you think of 70s England riots, the Margaret Thatcher shit that was going on. It's very bleak, very grey sounding. The background to it, like I just said, all that stuff, the production, the packaging, and the songwriting are all so unique and alien. Like, you get this, and especially nowadays with it being, like, worn out and some people's are really rusty, mine aren't. But you open it, the sheet with all the songs that's in like blood red writing, and then you put one of the songs on, and extremely loud bass, really clangy guitars that sound like they sound like the tin. They don't sound like a guitar. These lyrics that are super abstract. It is just one of those albums that is very alien. It doesn't feel like any other album. Jar Wobble and Keith Levine were on their A game here, in my opinion. Like, their jams through this album are just incredible. Pop tones, Careering, Bad Baby. It's just, it's incredible. You can't get better than this album. And for me as well, John Lydon's peak here, lyrically and vocally. Like, the lyrics on here are very abstract, and I believe he came up with them on the spot, but they're like poetry. Like, some of the things he says are just, how do you come up with that? Especially on the spot. It's definitely his best lyrical, and the reason I say it's the best vocals, even though I think in Sex Pistols he was slightly a bit better than he was with PiL, but vocally on this record he does a lot of, he's doing this Captain Beefheart sort of thing where he changes how he sings depending on how the song sounds. Like, the suit is really nasally, and then he's using a head voice in No Birds Do Sing, and he's sort of screaming on Chant, and Albatross, he sounds pretty tired. Death Disco sounds like he's fucking crying his heart out. He uses a lot of vocal styles on this record, and that's why I think it's his best vocally. But yeah, my top tracks, Chant, which I'd say is my favourite, but I will say the album version, the production of it isn't as good. I like how the song was played live and on the John PiL sessions and stuff more, but I'll still label it as one of my favourite tracks. Bad Baby, similar sort of thing. Like, the Gildersleeves version is the best version, but still really good on here. It's Jar Wobble's best bass line, in my opinion. Just that do 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 do. Careering as well, absolutely crazy song. And the worst tracks for me, Graveyard, which that's one that I actually don't like as much. Like, I still like it, obviously, but it's definitely the weakest one. And then the last two, Socialist and Radio 4. So literally all the instrumentals. Which was unintentional, but I mean, come on. The rest of the album, you've got everything on here is just amazing. Memories, Swan Lake, Pop Tones, Careering. Yeah, it's Metal Box, and it's another 10 out of 10 album. If I could give it 11, I would. So there you go. There's my PiL Albums ranked video. See, I didn't really write many notes, but somehow I've made this 42 minutes long. I mean, in this time, you could have listened to Album, you could have listened to Flowers of Romance, first issue. Sorry for that jump cut there. My sister just came in, but can't remember what I was saying. But I need to recap it up now and close this video off. I don't know why this is so long. I don't know how it got so long. But yeah, so we'll just do a quick recap. So number 12, 9. Number 11, This Is What You Want, This Is What You Get. 10, End of World. 9, Commercial Zone. 8, Happy. 7, That What Is Not. Yeah, I'm tired, man. 6, Album. 5, This Is PiL. 4, What the World Needs Now. 3, First Issue. 2, Flowers of Romance. And 1, Metal Box. So, yeah. Thank you for watching this video. Leave your list in the comments below. If you've made it this far, then just, I can't believe it, honestly. It's thank you, because it's very long. And also, sorry if I've seemed a little dry or sad this video. I'm not, but I feel ill. So I guess I've been trying to keep it down and stuff. But yeah, thank you for watching, and see you in the next video, whenever that will be.